Good afternoon, good morning. This is Bobby Harris, the Executive Director of the Utility Broadband Alliance, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today for our webinar and great technical topic for all of you. Just a reminder for those of you who may not have used the GoToWebinar tool in the past, we have the opportunity for you to ask questions. There's a question function on your toolbar, and you just type in your questions. And remember, at the end, when we get to the question section, we'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible, and we will just read them exactly as you type them. So try to be clear and concise on your questions. And if we don't get to all the questions, of course, the panelists will follow up with you directly offline. This is a wonderful opportunity to hear from not only two UBBA strong members, but two members of the UBBA Board of Directors also. And I'm very pleased to welcome both Nokia and Southern California Edison to our webinar today. I'm not going to take up a lot more time. I'll be back with you at the end when we do some Q&A. But in the meantime, let me turn it over to Jeff Pittman from Nokia to take us through our webinar and introductions. And Jeff, it's all yours, sir.
Hey, Bobby, thank you so much. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. And first off, let me just say thank you to you, Bobby, again, and as always, as well as Trip for everything that you guys do constantly and everything that you've done in 2024. And congratulations on such a great year, I think, for UBBA and especially the recent Plug Fest event. I think it was really such a great event, and I think we're still very, very motivated coming off of that event, and so much excitement there and so much great interaction. So we're super happy to be part of this webinar today. And let me welcome everyone to the last UBBA webinar of the year, which is titled Preparing for a Carbon Neutral Future, How 5G FAN Technology is Revitalizing Utility Operations. So Southern California Edison and Nokia are collaborating to set new standards in grid modernization with the launch of Nokia network in North America with them for the first private 5G field area network. This cutting edge technology is a key enabler to a decarbonized, carbon neutral future and has earned the prestigious 2024 TechNexus Private Network Excellence in Energy and Utilities Award. And in today's this webinar today, we will examine how private 5G networks and FAN technology are transforming the way utilities communicate, manage grid operations, and integrate renewable energy sources. The key takeaways from today's webinar will be the role of 5G FAN in the digital transformation of the electric grid. Also, the importance of high performance scalable technology in achieving decarbonization goals. Also, how private 5G networks are helping utilities manage complexity, improve safety, and enhance the integration of renewable energy. And then lastly, insights from SCE and Nokia on driving innovation and building a sustainable energy future. So if we move to today's agenda in particular, as Bobby mentioned, my name is Jeff Pittman. I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar. I'm the head of the enterprise market unit in North America for mobile networks at Nokia. And then I'm joined today by two prestigious panelists, first being John Janney from Southern California Edison, and then Ali Shah from Nokia. So today we're going to first do a quick introduction to private 3GPP wireless networks and their role in utilities. Then we'll move into discussing transforming grid operations with private 5G. Then we'll talk about the great collaboration between Nokia and Southern California Edison. Then we'll talk about the impact on sustainability and environmental goals that all this has. And then last but not least, we definitely want to spend time and leave time for Q&A, because I think that is maybe also the most important part of this webinar is for us to be able to interact with the participants here and share things that we've learned along the way. And we truly understand that utilities are usually falling in, let's say, 4 to 5 different groups, right? So we have utilities that are perhaps just now starting to think about private wireless and maybe kind of starting their grid modernization journey. And so they're starting to just kind of look into what this is all about. They've kind of heard a little bit about it, but perhaps have not really gotten into deep yet in their analysis. Then we have kind of the next phase where people are really kind of already starting their journey, but maybe in the beginning phases, maybe an RFP phase, maybe preparing for an RFP. Then the next stage is folks that have already kind of gone through the first 2 phases. They're actively starting to deploy and starting to see some of the benefits of private wireless. And then towards the end, then we have folks that have already deployed and are really starting to kind of look at what's next, what's the next step. And I think the great thing about today's webinar is that we have John from Southern California Edison, who really has been through all those different phases already along the way. And then also Nokia, the value that we can bring here is that we have customers, I would say, in each one of those phases as we speak. So without further ado, maybe what we'll do is go ahead and get started, and we'll kind of start off with this introduction to private 3GPP wireless networks and their role in utilities. And John, maybe I might start with you. And if we think about this, and I know that SCE started their journey already back possibly in 2018, 2019, maybe even before then, when private wireless was truly being thought about and planned for, right? So if we look back at your journey along the way, what are some of the factors that contributed to SCE starting this journey in the beginning? And then maybe what were some of the key drivers also, that also impacted that journey along the way?
Yeah, you bet. So actually, it started with a knowing that we needed to replace our legacy wireless environment, which had not only scalability challenges, but also cybersecurity related challenges that we're going to have to mitigate. So that was really the genesis. Then we thought through some of the more traditional paths, including things like mesh networks. And, as we were starting to evaluate some of the challenges associated with the proprietary nature of that, we really got some insight actually from some of the folks at Nokia that said, hey, look, there may be a different way to approach this. And as we kind of looked forward, I think some of the things that we started to think about was not only what are some of their current needs that we can identify, but really trying to look to the future, including things like Internet of Things. We saw a world of not only, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, like two-way power flow requirements, but we also saw a world of millions of sensors. So as we started to extrapolate that view, I think we quickly determined that the way we were thinking about it was very limited. And with some insights that Nokia helped to contribute to, we thought more about what could be. And that's really what kind of started us down this path, just really trying to push the envelope relative to what is the art of the possible with where we actually see the world going.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, John. And maybe still with you, if we kind of expand on that a little bit. So utilities have a myriad of wireless networks and technologies already out there today, right? And so one decision that had to be made was, do you continue down that route? Is there some evolution of that? Or, do you move then over to some sort of standardized, in this case, 3GPP solution? So can you kind of maybe expand a little bit on that? What are your thoughts, or what was considered when you were making a decision to move towards a 3GPP based solution? What are the benefits of the standardization?
Yeah, a lot of them are listed on the slide, and I think for the audience, I think fairly obvious, right? The opportunity to go with a supported standard when you think about cybersecurity, long-term supportability, ensuring that you have, that support environment and that infrastructure in place to ensure that you're not investing in something that's going to be stranded or non-supported in the coming years. The opportunity, obviously, from an operational point of view, the more we could standardize, we thought we could simplify the architecture of our environment. And from a long-term cost benefit perspective, it'd be far easier for us to support, on behalf of our ratepayers in a cost-effective way. And then obviously we're in a utility environment, so when you think about things like compliance, so we have to comply with NERC CIP. There's a lot of things that go into that, the implications of not complying with those standards. I think all of those things coupled together really drove us to a place that, I mean, the obvious answer, if possible, was to go with a standards-based solution.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Thanks, John. And Ali, maybe over to you to kind of get your thoughts on that as well. So I know that you've been working closely with SCE for a number of years, and kind of what's your thoughts on SCE's decision to opt for a standards-based technology? Of course, could be LTE or 5G if we talk about this in the broader sense across utilities, because I think this is relevant not only for SCE but for the utility industry as a whole. But looking at what are the benefits in general of the standards-based technology versus other wireless options?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And John, building on what John just said, NERC CIP is critical, and then there's a lot of overlap between what 3GPP has when it comes to cybersecurity systems, protection of information, configuration changes. These are all NERC CIP requirements and are built into the 3GPP standard. Secure connectivity, like concepts like TLS version 1.2, 1.3, authentication and access. Then the biggest advantage, I believe, is that you have skill set availability. You have a lot of people with LTE 5G equipment experience, hands-on experience. So that reduces the operational complexity. You have a lot of people who know what they're doing. What that allows you to do is build a scalable network which can support today's use cases, which are thousands of devices, and then tomorrow's use cases, which are going to scale to millions of devices, as we are looking at with AMI 2.0. Last but not the least, future-proofness is built into the 3GPP standard. This technology is there to be supported for decades, and that's the type of time frame our utility customers have been looking for when they build their field area networks. Back to you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. I think as we're talking through this, it's just so exciting to me because I do have a CSP kind of background, right? Or CSP support background, let's say, from a Nokia perspective. And it's great to see the two worlds really coming together, right? So you've got this 3GPP knowledge, this 3GPP world, whether it's LTE or 5G. And let's face it, utilities is a totally different world, right? So if you take somebody from CSP with a CSP background and kind of bring them to this conversation, they quickly realize there's a lot of terms, there's a lot of things that you guys were throwing out there, right? That somebody that's just been focused on CSPs most likely doesn't understand. So I think it's great that collaboration and partnership really that we're seeing, not only just between Nokia and SCE, but across the board. And I think we learn from each other daily, right? I say, even though we've been together for quite a few years already working on this, we still learn from each other daily, right? And I think that that's a key takeaway, is that there's so much on both sides to know, and I don't think that anyone is able to know every single point of it, but working together throughout the journey, we're still accomplishing this common goal that we have in the end. So then maybe if we think about, then the next one being kind of, if we look at the spectrum in particular, right, Ali? So maybe to you. So SCE has elected to deploy using CBRS, and of course we know there's many different, I won't say many, but there's several different options out there available to utilities. So I think that this is an interesting one that folks here joining today might want to know more about, right? So what are the benefits of CBRS, and maybe also then what was the, how did that decision look for SCE whenever they made that decision to go that direction?
Yes, so when the CBRS auctions happened, and we're talking now more than 5 years ago, SC participated and acquired some PAL licenses for the counties that they cover in around Los Angeles and Southern California in general. So those PAL licenses was a good launching pad to build a 3GPP network. And then where we, of course, gave our support to SCE was recommendations around how to come across, how to, first of all, scale for capacity, because CPRS with the PAL licenses, the priority access licenses, which are different from the GAA licenses, the ones that SCE has acquired are the PAL licenses, but it can be, the capacity can be augmented with GAA licenses so that you can build for future proofness, for traffic growth. At the same time, with the CAT-B option, you can also build for coverage on CBRS. And so you can, with a high probability, achieve connectivity to the phase 1 use cases to a great degree with CBRS. And the biggest advantage is that CBRS can start with not just LTE, but it also can launch with 5G. Today, it's available and ready to go. And that's what the decision was.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ali. I appreciate that. Yeah, and so then we think about, if we think about this first part of the journey, right? SCE was on at one point in time, and then we have other utilities, hopefully ones joining today, that are still at that very first phase of the journey. I think there's part of this where we say, build it and they will come, right? And when I say build it, they will come, the use cases will come. Okay, but I think, you know, utilities still have to justify this investment, because it's a huge investment, not only in terms of time, but of course of money. And this is a 10, 20-year investment that utilities are making, and we understand that, and it's not to be taken lightly. But I think one of the things that we've managed to do and help utilities with is kind of justify the investment that's being made here, again, which is a significant one. So if we think about that, John, right, of course you can say, hey, let's build a 5G network, and that sounds great. Okay, then probably somebody says, okay, well, what are we going to do with it, right? And so you say, well, we've got it, we'll figure it out later. Of course, that doesn't work, right? So can you shed a little bit of insight on what were the kind of key use cases in the beginning when you were making that pitch, or that, you know, argument, or presenting that within SCE on why to make such an investment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, a big area of focus for Southern California Edison has been distribution automation. And in addition to the fan, we are also making some other investments that we believe have justified quantifiable benefits associated with distribution automation as it relates to reducing customer minutes of interruption. So if you think about, and we dollarize those impacts to ratepayers. So just through that and sort of our view of what we can accomplish with a greater deployment of distribution automation devices, that was a substantial support or justification. In addition, we're seeing and are anticipating further integration of distributed energy resources, right, which is an absolute requirement. It was kind of interesting, not necessarily characterized on the slide, but I was thinking about it last night. I don't know that we certainly anticipated, you know, we're on this carbon neutral path, super important for the environment. We certainly anticipated as part of that an increasing number of electric vehicles. But now as we think more about even electrification and the increased demands, our ability to sophisticatedly understand the capacity of our existing infrastructure and plan for new investments, prioritized investments, certainly align with an overall business case. That's kind of looking a little bit more to the future, but I'm so happy that we actually initiated this journey. And again, as we sort of articulate, distribution automation, quantifiable customer benefits were a huge part of that justification. Cybersecurity, opportunities to greatly improve our cybersecurity. Those were all very, very meaningful relative to what was in the art of the possible when we kind of looked at sort of the current state business case. I don't know if you want me to go directly into the future state. I'm happy to go there, or you want to kind of pause on sort of what was almost immediate benefits that we anticipated once the field area network was live.
No, I think that's great, John. Really appreciate it. And I think one of the things we've seen as well from Nokia's side is that, you know, some of these use cases are common across utilities, and then some are not, right? So not every utility is the same. So I think that that's interesting as well to really understand, because when we have these discussions with utilities, you know, the normal thing to do, especially kind of in a CSP world, is we want to come and talk straight away about, okay, here's the radio, here's how much power it has, here's all the dBs, the watts, everything, right? But then in reality, what's really important is to understand the utilities needs and what their pain points are. That's the first thing. And so I think the use case discussion comes quickly right after that. And that's something that we like to try and help utilities with, to help, again, justify the investment that they're going to make. So that's kind of one part of the journey we talked about earlier. But I think now SCE is kind of starting to get to that last part of the, well, not the last part of the journey, but the next step, right? Because I think this journey kind of maybe comes around in cycles, but you guys are already kind of looking at the future now, right? So deployment's ongoing, you're seeing some benefits of the existing use cases. Kind of what do you see in the future that really kind of excites you and SCE?
Yeah, so what I'll just say first and foremost, right, is we anticipate a steep acceleration in the number of digital points or sensors on the grid. So as you think forward, the business case, it has to be a lot more than just what you're anticipating and you're managing today. You have to try to anticipate what the future is going to be and what technology is going to give you if you got the communications platform behind it. But we are certainly looking at, again, from a customer benefits and O&M benefits point of view, we're looking at what we can do from enhancing our field tools for our mobile workforce. We're looking at how can we even reduce truck rolls associated with remote substation management where we don't have fiber. Certainly, as we think about our metering infrastructure and our anticipated 2.0 rollout, we expect this platform to be the communications approach and strategy. And it's interesting, not anticipated necessarily when we did the original business case, but as we're envisioning filing for the justification for our AMI 2.0 ambitions, having this communication platform behind it, we can now see how that can enable the comms out to our 5 million meters. And you think about all of the benefits associated with what the new meters are going to provide, from even like a compute at the edge. And certainly I didn't talk about it yet, but we see quite a bit of benefits from an asset inspection point of view. We're looking at all kinds of different ways. You know, we have vegetation management opportunities here. Certainly California went through the wildfires. We spend a tremendous amount of money trying to inspect vegetation, the structures around that vegetation, try to mitigate the risk of wildfire. We think with this communications capability, LiDAR, some other capabilities, that we can greatly reduce our costs from an ongoing point of view for asset inspection. We see the communications platform, the field area network, as a huge enabler of that. And so these are, with that long-term lens, the anticipation of all those millions of devices, digital points, with the further evolution of technology, the common theme is that you're going to have to be able to communicate. You're going to have to be able to do it securely and at scale. And that's what we think this platform is going to provide for us.
Excellent. Yeah, that's super exciting. So it's so great to be a part of that and really be a part of SCE transforming their grid operations with private 5G. And so that leads us kind of to the next section on the agenda there that we talked about. And Ali, maybe over to you. We've picked on John here a little bit, but so Ali, from your perspective, I wanted to get your thoughts on this one question, and I think it's a very kind of obvious question that perhaps is on people's minds and sometimes does get asked. So when we think about 5G versus LTE, right? So why wouldn't a utility just go straight to 5G? Why would they even think about LTE? I mean, 4G, we have 5G, 5G is the next G. It totally makes sense. You just go straight to 5G, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that and some of the things that would impact to that decision, and you know, why was SCE able to start with 5G day one?
Yes, so Jeff, building again on John's points that he elaborated around digitalization of the grid operations, the first thing was the spectrum choice that SCE did by acquiring the CBRS PAL licenses. that spectrum. So 5G, you need at least 5 megahertz of spectrum or higher. CBRS comes with 10, or if you can do two carriers with a PAL and a GA, you can go up to 20 megahertz. So as CBRS is right for 5G deployment, of course, there are some nuances. There are the devices ready, and yes, by this time, devices are available which support CBRS. So that was at the top of the mind, and we supported SC in their decision to launch with 5G from the get-go. And what are the benefits? Well, of course, 5G has more capabilities when it comes to cybersecurity, although LTE is also very secure, and 5G builds on it. There's a whole focus on reliability in the roadmap for 3GPP. And then, of course, the operational simplification, the worker safety. So what we did at UBBA PlugFest is we did focus on some of these utility use cases and made them very easy. So you can go to the UBBA website and just go through those use cases. One of them was around edge compute and low latency. So what can you do with latency? Well, that's where 5G has some capabilities that are going to get better over the coming years. It will only get better and better towards going from latency by different architectures, by bringing the edge closer to the use case. You can first of all reduce latency that way, and that's what we showed at UBBA PlugFest. But on top, there is the element of ultra reliable low latency, URLLC, which combines the low latency features with reliability so that you can reliably predict the latency, which is very important, especially for different use cases. The one we showed at PlugFest was around distribution transfer trip, which is a very important safety mechanism for DER management, distributed energy resource management, because the quicker you can de-energize the impact of islanding, which happens when, say, distributed energy resource is still injecting power into the grid where there is nowhere to go. That's an islanding issue, and it's a worker safety issue. You have to de-energize it. And so the lower the latency, the better. But the latency comes in not just there, but for wildfire mitigation. Latency is important. All those things, and then the fact that if they go with 5G, which they had ample spectrum, it was future-proof. Now there are some other spectrum choices that we can discuss later, but for SC, the time was right to go with 5G because of those different factors. Back to you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. And as you say, I think I mentioned earlier, there are definitely multiple spectrum choices out there, right? And I think different ones perhaps are different or a better fit for a particular utility. And I think we acknowledge that. And I think, Ali, you would acknowledge also, of course, the spectrum that's available, of course, then can heavily dictate whether you start with LTE or 5G. But also, there's quite many use cases out there that do not require 5G, so that you actually can start with LTE, right? So I think it really just depends, and you know, at Nokia we understand that, and we have customers that are starting with LTE, and then we have customers obviously here that are starting with 5G. So again, not a one size fits all. I think there's options out there, which is great, and you know, it's great that we're involved with customers that are doing both LTE and 5G as well. So maybe then if we move to the next one. I guess, John, you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but anything else you want to say on how 5G connectivity is optimizing SCE's grid operations for better performance and reliability? Have you seen some impacts already, even in the early stages of the deployment, that you can maybe talk about or reference?
Yeah, you know, you're right. I did touch on them, and I think even Ali talked about them. I think when we think about grid operations, it extends from everything from, you know, transmission to the distribution, and, you know, from protection to the control of distribution automation devices. And I think when we think about scalability, low latency, and then as we talked about future proofing, I really see, you know, and with consideration for, you know, the spectrum we acquired, it really was, I think, an obvious choice for us, even though we felt we might be first. So, but yeah, from a grid operations point of view, and something that not a lot of people understand, but when we talk about a digital grid, I think people can look at device counts and you can start to get sort of a hockey stick view of sensors and different things that we might deploy. But right now our Southern California's grid is actually made up of over like 700,000 digital control points, monitoring points, control points, all actively working, needing to be monitored, and one may have a cascading impact on another. And so to be able to look at that with the at the speed and pace and scale that 5G offers, it's going to have a tremendous impact on grid operations as we move forward, as well as addressing many of the other things that even LTE would have certainly resolved for us relative to some of our legacy challenges.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And maybe just to kind of expand on that even a little bit further, Ollie, maybe from your perspective, and I know you work closely with the SCE teams, almost on a daily basis, and certainly on a weekly basis, and you're there in California, matter of fact, as we speak, right? But from what you're seeing and hearing, is there anything you can share with regards to benefits from the deployment of 5G at SCE? Any early indicators, any kind of high-level comments you can make? Maybe, for example, I think John mentioned also about latency. So anything there maybe you could mention that people might find interesting?
Absolutely, and that's building on what John has already said and touched upon. That now that you have connectivity to the touch points, you've connected the OT touch points, you got visibility, things that you would have to do a truck roll, you would have to go out, and that could take hours even, or minutes with the legacy technology, now is down into the seconds and milliseconds of visibility. That's a big revolution for the whole smart grid movement, we would say. And that's what we've been focused on, working with our utility partners around how do we showcase those use cases and those benefits to the wider audience. And that's why we've engaged wholeheartedly in the UBBA Plug Fest, because that was a big testing ground for edge compute, low latency, device routing, all those use cases to showcase the benefits and the trade-offs. Of course, there are still many use cases that LTE has enough latency, but if you can go to 5G, why not? Why not start from 5G from the get-go and keep evolving towards the future release benefits that are coming in the years to come?
Yeah, and what I think is pretty neat, like I said earlier. So maybe there's an initial set of use cases that help drive or justify the investment. But then once the investment's made, then it is build it, then they will come. Then there's use cases coming that we don't even have any line of sight of today, just because the connectivity will be there. And then you have these things such as, the low latency that 5G brings, et cetera, right? So it's kind of both sides, right? If you think about it. So yeah, super exciting, and it'll be good to maybe have a webinar this time next year and kind of compare the notes and see where we are and what we know then that we didn't know now, right? So and then maybe if we transition over now kind of to the next section, if you will, or the next point on the agenda, is just to talk a little bit about the collaboration between Nokia and SCE and in the lessons learned, right? So when we were kind of putting together this agenda for the webinar, one of the things we talked about, one of the things that I said was, it's great, let's have some slides, but let's not get too focused on that, right? And the slides and the material, et cetera. What I really would like is for people to walk away and say, hey, that was a valuable, 45 minutes or an hour that I spent. I feel like I learned something. There was something that, I'm at this point on my journey and I had some questions and I was unsure of something, and this truly helped me. So I found this useful. So that's really, I think that would be a successful webinar for us. I think John and Ollie, you guys would agree, right? So yeah, along those lines, I think then maybe let's talk a little bit about some lessons learned, right? I mean, there's things that we thought 2 or 3 years ago that if we look back now, okay, that didn't happen, or it happened in a different way. And so what's some of the things that maybe we could share with other utilities who are just starting on their journey? So John, to that end, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about the collaboration between Nokia and SCE and then the lessons learned.
Yeah, I'll start with the collaboration. So Nokia has been a fantastic partner and really with us from inception as we were trying to visualize, what the solution might look like. And I think very influential relative to how we decided to approach it. And I think we're very enthusiastic that we went this path because many of our earlier thoughts were fairly narrow and did not provide for the scale and the long-term view that we now see is going to be needed with consideration for the volume of sensors and the things that we anticipate. From a lessons learned point of view, I think there are a few. This is the kind of project, at Southern California Edison that's actually technically being run by IT, but we obviously have heavy dependencies not only on our external partners, but our internal partners, including transmission and distribution. And we're really relying on them to support us in the construction of these towers, the locations, as well as the deployment of our radios. And so really, as we have been trying to think about what was necessary to be successful, a big part of it was ensuring our partners were ready with the resources necessary, the training necessary, and that we put in the appropriate time to figure out what really it's going to take for us to build these towers and deploy these radios in alignment with the deployment of the core. And be very, very thoughtful about those things and really try to anticipate. So we ran into issues such as finding obstructions from an engineering point of view, pre-construction. So really being thoughtful, not only to rely on the existing drawings, but to try to find ways to move beyond those. So you know where you intend to place those towers in your locations, they're ready to receive those. As we think about permitting, depending on your jurisdictions, anticipating what that process is and the life cycle of that process. Then I would say, in addition to that, for us, we have certain resource constraints that have to be on site when we're doing work. They don't necessarily perform the work, but they're there to ensure that it's done safely and with consideration for the specific needs of the substations. And one of the things that we found is we did not anticipate that enough, and that became a constraint. So overall, I would say being able to anticipate, plan for issues based on some of the lessons others have learned, such as ourselves, and we're happy to share those lessons learned. And then as it relates to working with our partners, really making sure that they're prepared and overseeing people that they obviously have employed to work on these projects, but making sure that we're checking quality from day one, ensuring there's the appropriate training, ensuring there's the appropriate oversight of the work. So the work that you're anticipating doing, the schedules you're intending to maintain, you're putting in appropriate contingency for issues, which are always going to happen on the first time, but making sure you don't repeat those as you move forward and plan.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think, as you say, the partnership and the working together is key. And as we've mentioned before, things are going to happen, unfortunately, that are unplanned. But it's really how I think SCE and Nokia have been able to work together to try and anticipate those, or at least quickly react to those as they come up. And another great thing about of course, UBBA and the webinars here is being able to have a platform to share those lessons learned, right? And I think everybody's going to continue to learn as each individual utility goes throughout their journey. Maybe Ali, from your side, anything else that comes to mind? You've been involved in this since quite the early stages, early part of the journey. Anything else maybe that you're thinking or comes to mind that John didn't mention?
Absolutely. First of all, agreeing with John on the lessons, and then on top, the launch towards 5G has allowed us to look ahead because most of our customers plan to eventually migrate to. So with the 5G launch, we are learning a lot of things around our feature set, what is needed for optimizing use cases for the utility needs, which includes latency, edge compute, all those things which will become much more important as we go from thousands of devices today to potentially millions of devices in the future. And how do we maximize the performance while we maintain the reliability of the network? Those are some great lessons that we have learned.
Excellent. Yeah, really good points. So yeah, I think then this takes us maybe to the last part of the agenda here, and last but not least. But maybe John, we'll start with you first, and then Ali also get your thoughts. But we'll transition over now and talk about what's the impact that this private 5G project will have on SCE's sustainability and environmental goals? And like I said, maybe, Ali, you can also kind of comment from Nokia's side, because that's super important to us as well, right? So maybe John, if you might want to say a few words first.
Sure. Yeah. We certainly believe technology and communications at scale are vital to our ability to actually support the increasing demand for electricity as well as the net zero objectives. We're leaning very heavily on technology to ensure that we are able to scale, react quickly, integrate distributed energy resources, and actively manage them with reliability and customer affordability in mind. And we think this platform provides us the vehicle to manage all of the sensors and the monitors and the controls and the digital points necessary to enable that net zero mission.
Very good. And it's great to be able to be a part of that. And Ali, from your side, I guess we have some similar thoughts as well, but maybe approach it in a little bit different way. Of course, being Nokia and being an equipment infrastructure vendor.
Absolutely. So in 2024, we have launched our commitment towards helping customers achieve the net zero targets, which includes our hardware becoming more efficient with ReefShark SoCs. We're working on the software where we have different features to increase the efficiency by, for example, putting the equipment to sleep when it's not needed, when there's no traffic. There are also energy efficient solutions from a site solutioning to the zero footprint site, the battery backup, the cooling, all those are needed for enhancing the efficiency. Then there is AI/ML when it comes to optimizing the performance, including, so we're heavily using analytics in order to drive a much more efficient radio access network. Last but not the least, our services are being digitalized also to enhance the overall speed of deployment, as well as visibility and efficiency which comes with it. So in that sense, Nokia is making a big push towards helping our customers achieve their net zero commitments and targets. Back to you, Jeff.
Hey, thanks, Ali. I appreciate it, and thank you, John and Ali, for a very informative discussion here. So always great to be able to talk about these important topics in the utility space, and always are willing to help other utilities in their journey as well, as we've mentioned before. And so maybe if we just kind of quickly take a look at the key takeaways here from our discussions today. I would say private 5G is driving innovation in energy and in utilities and the digital transformation of the electric grid. Nokia and SCE's collaboration is changing the landscape of utility operations. 5G provides a future-proof path to secure, reliable, mission-critical grid communications that will enable automation and promote worker safety. And then last but not least, as we just mentioned, driving sustainability. And I think the overall arching message here, and I know I believe I also speak for John and SCE, but from Nokia's side, we're more than happy to try and assist, again, others in their journey, answer questions, share things that we've come across in our time doing this. We think that together is better, right, as an industry. And of course, that's the whole mission of UBBA in general, is to bring like-minded people together that are working to achieve a common goal, and whether that's utilities or partners, et cetera. And the more we work together, the better we are, and will help us to all, of course, together drive innovation for the future. So having said that, I think maybe what we can do now quickly is, I think we do have a few questions that have come in from the audience. So maybe we will transition over to a little bit of Q&A, and maybe John and Ali, I'll maybe leave the answers up to you guys to decide how to answer. And if I'm looking here, there's kind of 3 questions that maybe are similar. So maybe what I'll do is ask these 3 together as a group, because I think the answer will probably, if I can anticipate, I believe the answer will be kind of similar or common across all three. So let me do that. The first one in this group is, how's your experience with the CBRS band? Any issues with interference or spectrum capacity? The second one was, how many remotes do you have per base station in your 5G deployment? And then the third is, in your coverage area, how many base stations and remotes have you already deployed? And what is the future number of devices you envision to deploy? So some of that is kind of specific to SCE. So John, I'll maybe start with you, and Ali can also chime in. Not sure how specific you can get on some of the answers here, but I'll let you guys kind of tag team then.
Yeah, I was going to maybe defer a little bit to Ali on the technical side. We're very early stage. I'm not aware of any interference issues relative to spectrum, but maybe I'll turn to Ali and maybe ask you to take a shot at answering.
Yeah, and John, absolutely. So we had anticipated that some of these CBRS questions are around in the industry. They've been going around, and the reason is very basic. CBRS at 3.5 gigahertz. If you look at this picture, the green circle shows you the traditional propagation, which is very small compared to what a lower frequency band could give you. So even though capacity-wise, CBRS is an amazing choice because it's really got a lot of capacity, you can start with a PAL license and request for a few, at least one more GAA license. 20 megahertz gives you pretty good capacity. I cannot get into specific numbers because of the sensitivity on behalf of SC. But what I would like to explain is we are taking advantage, working of course with SC, of an FCC clause which says you can have Cat B devices on the other side. So as you can see, the blue circle is the enhanced radius, which is solely because you have a fixed use case. It's not mobile. So at that use case, there is a tower, maybe 20 feet tall, and there's at least a 15 dBi antenna on it. That Cat B end device, which has to be managed by the SAS, by the way, that's a very big requirement in the rules from FCC. That device can then enhance the overall link budget so that the radius goes up by about 250%. And this is again theoretical mathematical calculations. Folks, you can reach out to me if you want more details around the technical detail. But that's at a high level, Jeff, the answer around how CBRS is going. Despite the CBRS challenge when it comes to output power, there are some techniques that are being used to overcome those challenges. Jeff, back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Ali. I appreciate it. The next question here is, are you slicing bandwidth by traffic type, prioritizing? How is the maintenance going when you have to update devices? So I guess it's maybe one or two questions in one here, but Ali, did you want to take a?
Yeah. So I'm going to take an industry view versus just talking about SC. Again, the general view is that each use case needs its own bandwidth and latency requirements. So the thinking is that, when it comes to DER, where there's latency requirements, we could have a slice around that. The non-latency sensitive use cases could have a different slice. That is the thinking. And again, the network is in its infancy, so the dialogue is ongoing on. And again, I will invite customers to join us, reach out to us, and we can discuss the different slicing options which are going to be appropriate by each use case.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ali. So then I think the last one here was again about CBRS, but a kind of specific question, Ali. It says, were there any concerns for CBRS due to US Navy operations in the area?
Yes, so again, I had anticipated those are the questions that on everybody's mind. Anybody touches CBRS, this is the question. CBRS used to have what we call the DPA, the dynamic protection areas. Everybody knows what they are, you can look it up. And there is something called the ESC, the environmental sensing capability, which tells the SAS that there is some sort of incumbent in the area, you cannot operate. These DPAs are these pink lines. This was more than 6-7 years ago. But over the last year, there has been an amazing shrinking in the DPA area. It's from this huge mass down to a very small sliver. So the overall coverage footprint of CBRS without the DPA has gone from 78% of the 50 contiguous states of the United States to 97%. It doesn't mean you're totally out of trouble, but yes, more or less, this has had a significant improvement in terms of the metrics, which in turn are very important for any utility customer when it comes to resiliency and reliability. So this I would be comfortable in saying, yes, there's a lot of good stuff happening in CBRS. And then on top, we have been offering a domain proxy, which has certain features which also enhance the resiliency of the solution.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Ali. So I think with that ends the questions that we have on the live webinar today. But if there's anybody that's watching, post webinar or after the fact, and that maybe has questions, as you said, Ali, feel free to reach out to us or to John. I'm sure John would be happy to support as well. So maybe we'll just go ahead and wrap up here, and just let me say again, thank you to everyone for attending today. Truly appreciate it. We are just super excited to be a part of this. Once again, we love talking about these topics. It's what we do day in and day out. And I want to really thank Ali and John for agreeing to be the panelists today and taking the time to do this. I'm sure people will find this extremely valuable. And so Bobby, also to you and Trip, thank you both for your support again, as I mentioned earlier. And may I request, Bobby, that we do this in 1 year's time, and then let's do a review of what we kind of talked about here today, or right in this webinar this year. And then a year from now, I think it would be really cool, a year looking back or something. We can come up with a fancy name for it, right? But I think it'd be cool to do that. John, Ali, would you guys be up for that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, sir.
All right. Thanks
And
again,
I think
everyone.
that's a great idea, Jeff. Thank you all. We will put that on the calendar for sure. And let me add my thanks, John and Ali and Jeff, not only as leaders of the Utility Broadband Alliance and key ambassadors, but leaders in our industry. I'm so thankful to have you guys share your insights with all of our listeners and viewers today, and with all the members of the Alliance. And so thank you all so much, and I wish everyone happy holidays and a wonderful new year, and we will see you soon.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.